Welcome to Season 4 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Larksong Enterprises. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education but feel like they have no options. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. I'd like to see a world where the work of teachers is valued and respected, and that teachers have a career pathway that enables them to continue to offer value to society beyond their work in the classroom. So in this season, we'll be speaking to other experts who help people to change careers, as well as a few ex-teachers who've forged a pathway into something new. So come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Every week I talk to teachers who want to leave the classroom but don't know what to do next. Many of them still have a passion for teaching. So I'm delighted to have ex-teacher Kahila Sivas as a podcast sponsor. Kahila has created a unique private practice as an online math and learning success coach, which has given her the freedom to follow her passion to teach and to make an impact. Now Kahila runs a business where she trains other teachers who want to escape the classroom. This is for teachers of any subject and any level who want to build a business while they're still working so they can confidently transition out of the classroom. Her mission is to help teachers to escape the classroom, create the income they deserve, find their inner balance, and make a huge impact in the lives of their students. Kahila runs regular webinars to explain her method and training programs. Check out her website at www.mathcodes, that's mathcodes.com/webinar, or email Kahila at kahila@mathcodes.com to get more information and set yourself up for success. Episode 22. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm very pleased to be interviewing Danyall Pugh, who's a content creator and a teacher. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so give us a bit of your story. What got you into teaching in the first place?
I think I've kind of always been a teacher. I'm the oldest, so my siblings would come to me for help with their homework. Definitely grew up in a household where sometimes our parents would get frustrated with us if they ask a question and then they have to ask again, like, you got 3 apples and this and this. So my patience has always been kind of long for teaching. And then when I got older, I actually went into accounting, and that's how I entered into teaching. I was a collegiate accounting instructor and then also taught bookkeeping at the high school level. So that's kind of how I got into teaching. But the more I did it, the more I worked, because like I said, I taught accounting at the college level, taught it at the high school level, while also being in accounting. That kind of left no time for my family. So the more I did that, the more I kind of started to think, like, there may be another approach I can take to this instead of being frustrated with teaching, even though that's something that I really enjoyed.
So how long have you actually been teaching for?
Since 2012. Yeah, since 2012.
Right. Okay. And so you started out in high school?
I taught in college first. I started as an adjunct, and just being in those courses, as someone kind of mentioned, like the local school needs a bookkeeping instructor, like kind of as an elective. So I kind of got into that by happenstance. But the more I did it, I started to realize, I really feel like I'm making a difference with helping them understand, financial literacy, how to open, checking accounts. So I enjoyed it, but I didn't like all the extra that came with being in the classroom, all the administrative tasks, or even just I don't want to say unnecessary policies, but sometimes they did seem unnecessary.
Okay.
So,
And so are you still teaching now?
I am not. Outside of the courses that I create myself, I don't teach for an institution anymore.
Right. Okay. And so what was the tipping point that made you decide to get out?
I think it was it was kind of building up over time. I have 2 small daughters, one's 7, the other is 4. And in both of the situations when I had them, I ended up having an emergency C-section in both situations. But at both my collegiate position and the high school position, they still needed grades to be in at a certain time. So, because my youngest was born in November, so that's, coming up on Thanksgiving, people are trying to wind down and get ready for Christmas break. So there was no consideration for it. She just had a major surgery. It was an emergency. Instead of recovering, I was up in the middle of the night, 1, 2 in the morning, trying to get grades in for both this college where I had over 100 students, including the high school where I had a large amount of students because I did accounting for the entire high school, not just a specific grade. So it was a lot and it was overwhelming. And to be honest, my husband kind of pulled me to the side and was like, I know you have all these dreams and aspirations and you want to make all this money so, your family can be happy and, nobody has to be in poverty anymore. But none of that matters if you're dead. And the way that you're going now, you're going to stress yourself out enough to have a heart attack or a stroke and will have nothing. So it kind of really made me take like a hard look at, because we were talking before, I said I had all these goals before I had a family. I went to college and set up these degrees or even started working these extra jobs before I even started having kids. So once we did get married and started a family, it kind of changed my focus. And to be honest, it almost seemed out of nowhere. At one point, you're eager to, please your bosses. You want to promote, you want to do a good job. And little by little, I started not to care anymore. I still wanted to do a good job, but if my kids were sick or needed something, I didn't have the same, sometimes when you call out or if somebody's sick, you kind of feel bad. In the beginning, I always felt bad. Like, I got to go to work. I need to call somebody else to help. But little by little, my priorities started to change. And it almost came to a point where you guys are going to have to figure out what you're going to do because I'm going to need to be here for my kids. Yeah. And just going through that process, we end up finding out my youngest was autistic. So with all of that, I just wasn't in a position where a job could come before my family anymore. And it seemed like there were more and more situations where I had to choose, am I going to be there for my kids or am I going to go the extra miles to make sure these assignments are done? Am I going to be at this function that my daughter's been practicing for the last few years? Or am I going to attend this faculty meeting that they threw together at the last minute? Things like that.
Yep, I know that one.
And, I'm not going to lie, it was a tough decision. We go to college and you spend 4 or 5, maybe even more years if you're going for your master's focused on this particular goal. And then you finally graduate and get the job. So you're happy and you're, trying to excel. So stopping to completely change direction to, you went to college to be a stay-at-home mom. You accomplished all of this to kind of put on the back burner. It was frustrating. Almost made you feel like a failure because, I've had these dreams for so long. I was close to my 30s by the time I had my youngest. I might have been like 30, 31. So from the time of 18, going to college, trying to meet these goals, achieving these goals and being happy about them to realize, this isn't really what I want anymore. I would prefer something where I could be a better parent, a more present parent, a better wife, things like that. And it didn't feel good. I'm happy that I made the decision, but going through the process, you almost feel crazy.
And grief as well, because you've given up your dream.
Yeah. Almost feeling, I don't want to say stupid, but, why would I put so much effort into doing this just to give up on it? But that's not what it is. If we're able to, upskill those experiences and that knowledge, I still get to teach, but without all the overwhelm. And then actually feel like I'm making a difference because all of my courses focused on trying to solve a problem for somebody. So more than just feeling like, I'm a teacher and I'm helping, I get to get that feedback that, I never thought about it like that, or this really changed my life, or it gave me a different approach to make it easier to have a work-life balance. And that's been really rewarding.
Okay, so as you were sort of making that transition out, what were you afraid of during that time?
Oh, failure. Oh, that's a big thing. I'm the oldest. I kind of set the standard for my siblings. My parents went to college. But if I'm not mistaken, I may be the first one. I don't think my parents have their masters. So, even my younger siblings were like, I'm going to try to get straight A's like you, or, I'm going to try to, have these accomplishments. So fear of failure, fear of, it seems like you're doing well. So if you leave your job, what happens if things don't go right? What if we have financial issues? You don't want to talk to anybody about that. You definitely don't want to be in a position where you're asking people for money. So, all of that. And the way I was raised, my mom was single. Both of my grandmothers are single. So they often worked multiple jobs, had a full-time job, maybe a part-time job or something that they had as like a side hustle. Even with my mom being in the military, there were times where she had to work like 24 hours and 48 hours straight. So all I knew was working hard to get ahead. If something wasn't going right, then you get another job or find another way to make this work. But the last thing you do is quit a job so you can be a mom. We were a mom and we had two jobs. We were a mom and a grandma and had two jobs. So what are you talking about? It was different. So, I didn't want to let anybody down. And because nobody was doing it, I don't want to say it makes you feel like an outcast, but, where do you go to, get this advice or to hear, even though this is different, you're doing the right thing. I hear it a lot now. I hear, how it's an inspiration, but while you're going through being the only person, you feel weird. You feel really weird.
And now there's so much information out there about how to start up something new. It's so overwhelming, isn't it? There's just so much content out in the world.
It is.
And you're making more. So tell us about that. How does that work? What do you do and what are you creating?
Well, to be honest, I do the exact same thing I did in the classroom. The same way I would come up with curriculum based on a particular topic, the exact same thing. But because I'm selling to people who choose to spend their money on these things, I found that it's been easier to solve a problem. So like I said, my background is in accounting. So at a college, you would say, I'm teaching accounting one-on-one, and you have to take this if you want to get your degree. In the business aspect, instead of saying I teach accounting courses, I would focus on a problem. Maybe I help small business owners who hate dealing with their books or are afraid to mess up their books. But focusing on that particular problem, when people hear that or see that, it's easy for them to say, oh, I do hate doing my books. I don't understand this, but I also may not have the money to pay somebody since I am a small business and just starting out. The same with one of my first courses when I was just starting out, because you learn a lot. Like you said, there's so much content out there, learning about marketing and how to sell our own knowledge. I understood that I needed to create things that people wanted. It's hard to convince people like, you should buy this and this is why you should buy it. That's hard enough by itself. So focusing on a problem, I targeted student loan debt, all while going through all of that transition, wanting to make more money. Like I said, working as an accountant, teaching courses at the college level, teaching courses at the high school level. All of that was so I could bring in more income to, leave something for my kids. So I ended up going back for my doctorate. And in doing that, I was like, the courses that I'm taking, the courses that I'm teaching, I really could do this. They're making people are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt from college. And then you see online people selling courses on intangible things, not saying mindset and things like that aren't important, but that's a different concept coming from an education background. So if people can sell a course like that for $10,000, surely, surely I could do this. They're already selling my knowledge. Let me try. And my first course did deal with student loan debt. Like I said, I was working on my doctorate. I ran out of student loans and I was kind of mad. Like, somebody should have told me, or I wish I had known better. And the more I complained about it, somebody would point out where, you can come talk to the school about this. We're having a college funding type of a college fair. So, students can fill out the FAFSA and stuff like that. Why don't you come and just share your story to help them understand why they need to apply for scholarships? And that first presentation, it kind of just took off from there. More people would ask me to come speak. And then I understood, well, if I'm speaking, maybe I should sell something to, maybe make this income. So I came up with a course, no different than what I was creating for the high school and the colleges, but it focused on compound interest and not ending up like me. And the more I spoke, students would buy it, parents would buy it, other teachers would refer me to other schools to say, this is what's helping our students. And it really just took off from there.
Wow. And so how much do you sell that course for? Are you still selling that course?
It's grown into like a membership program. When I started it, it was a $49 course. You pay one time, get access. But then once I saw, students have questions outside of just going to college, what about my first credit card? What about my first car or my first apartment? So in the membership program, those are the things we talk about. They still get access to the course to understand how compound interest will affect them and pretty much not end up like me with over $100,000 worth of debt and still not quite happy with your career. But also those things about getting your first apartment, buying your car, making sure that you save and budget your money so you don't have to call your parents for help. Because a lot of the students that I work with, unfortunately, do come from maybe lower middle income or impoverished homes, all a background where they would qualify for financial assistance through in America, we call it the FAFSA. They fill out a form and pretty much I don't want to say guaranteed, but you qualify for a level of debt that the average person wouldn't qualify for. Right. Somebody with a job for a number of years couldn't go to a bank and get a loan for that much money the same way we can go get a loan for college through this particular government program.
Right.
And it's mostly for low income families, maybe middle income, low income families. So when these students go off to college, their families don't always have enough money to take care of home and send enough money to help them with groceries and things like that. So those are, things we would let them know. It is exciting to go off to college. It is a great accomplishment. But once you get there, you still need to survive. And That's pretty much what the membership covers.
Yeah, fantastic. That's such great advice. I remember going home from university to see my family because I had to move from Port Macquarie, which is about 400 kilometres north of Sydney, down to Sydney to go to uni. And, I'd go home once or twice a year to see my family. And I'd always go and get a new toothbrush out of the cupboard because I didn't want to have to go and buy a toothbrush because they were like $5. And, that was back in the days when a cappuccino was at $2. So that was a lot of money to spend $5 just on a toothbrush. Yeah. So I would go and nick one out of my mother's cupboard, So,
I'm guilty. We were taking food, tissue, the little wall plug-in things. My mom used to have a lot of those. Definitely stocking up on everything. Going home was almost like going to the grocery store.
Yeah, that's right. And my kids do that at our place now. They come and go, oh, what can I take home?
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like you've been an amazing success setting this up. What skills would you say you've taken out of teaching into this role that you've got now, that you're doing now, the work that you do now?
I would say so much, but mostly the problems that come with classroom management. Oftentimes, especially once I started teaching the bookkeeping course in the high school, they kind of just knew they needed it, but what they wanted, how to structure it, how things would flow, what the curriculum was, there was no information. So it was kind of like, kind of figure it out, but do a good job because we want the students to learn something. We don't know what you're going to teach them, but they need to be able to we need to be able to prove they learned something by going through this. So taking those problems, um, being on the job, sometimes they're frustrating, but being in those situations where you don't have anybody to turn to, it kind of forces you to figure it out. And if I could figure it out for this high school, which was, a great working environment, but if I could push through and figure it out for them, why not do it for myself? Especially since if I can build this is something that's going to benefit my family way longer than my position at the high school.
Yeah.
Now that I don't do that anymore, it really has no benefit to them. But the courses or any other digital product that I've created continue to sell on even after I'm not here anymore. And to me, that was my biggest goal. A lot of the people I grew up with are like the students that I work with now. If it wasn't for the FAFSA or these government programs, we wouldn't be able to afford to go to college. And a lot of us go to school to make it out of those situations. A lot of people do go. So, you can have nice things, a nice house and a nice car. But ultimately, I just wanted to make it so my kids didn't have to start over with where I started from. And here, that happens a lot. It's highly possible for your parents to make it to upper middle class. But oftentimes, especially for minority students, sometimes we end up falling back down an economic class because in essence, we are starting over, going to college, starting at the bottom, trying to work your way up. And now with the way inflation is going, these raises are not keeping up. They're not keeping up at all. So it's getting harder. And the life that I envisioned for my family, once I saw that my career couldn't provide that, I had to figure out something else. To me, there was no other way around it.
Wow. Yeah. So it's a generational gift actually that you've created for your family.
I definitely hope so. That's definitely my biggest prayer. Because it's definitely a struggle coming from trying to struggle through college, because I didn't necessarily go away. But like I mentioned, my mom was in the military. So when I started college, maybe an hour from where she was stationed, she ended up getting stationed in Korea. So she was across the world. Closest family members in the States, maybe it'd been an 11, maybe 12-hour drive. So, it was a difficult transition, and that's something that I definitely don't want my kids to deal with at all. Even if they do go away to school, I want them to have enough that even if I'm hours away, they're not struggling to work and attend college or work and keep their grades up. Because it's hard. It's hard. It's so hard. But I don't feel like if I can create something to make it easier for them, hopefully it would be a benefit and not like a crush. I definitely don't want to create, spoiled brats. Hopefully they're appreciative and, I'll just remind them of those things. How sometimes they'll say, oh, people are, I had to walk to school with a hole in my shoe in the snow. They're going to get them same stories. This was hard. We worked hard to make it easier for you guys. So, build on that instead of starting over with the things that we had to struggle through.
Yeah. So what you've created now, though, you're in a position now where you were traveling to the schools to deliver the courses, and then COVID happened. So how did you resolve that?
Well, to be honest, when it first happened, I'm not going to lie, I was concerned like everybody else. So I kind of stopped going altogether. I would host virtual options, but I wasn't too comfortable with going in. And then, like I said, I have small children. So when Corona came, I think my youngest may have been 2. So that would make my oldest maybe like 5 or 6. So with that, it was just even more uncomfortable. And at that time, I didn't know my youngest was autistic. We could just tell something was different. She didn't sleep well or she was cranky. So I definitely didn't want to go out and bring something back to them. So outside of the virtual options, I kind of started hosting my own like weekend workshops where still virtual, but people could prepay to attend versus me trying to go to the schools. And then once schools did start opening back up, like, the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, I started hiring other people to go out and speak. And that's been a blessing in and of itself, because now it creates more time for my family. I really am able to be more of a stay-at-home mom because I don't have to travel to all the different schools. And the more people hear about it, other people are like, I have student loan debt. I feel like I can do this. And that's another gateway into, teaching them what I'm doing. Because it really isn't anything hard. It's the exact same things we do in the classroom, just on a topic, on something that we struggle through. In the States, most people have student loan debt. If you don't have student loans, you're kind of like a unicorn. If you have a degree with no debt, that's strange over here. Yeah. So there are a lot of people that are interested, and most schools don't have the resources to hire a financial literacy tutor or pay people to come in and talk about these things. And since I sell the course and the membership program, I can offer the presentation for free, because that's pretty much like I guess what you would call a lead magnet. I go in and speak, talk about all the struggles that I've had because of student loan debt, what I should have known, what I wish I had known. And if you don't want to end up like me, we have this membership program. So that's kind of how it flows. And then the people that I have go to the schools now, same thing, tell me about your student loan experience so it can be genuine and you're really talking to them about it. So everybody doesn't have, the same horror story like I have. Some people, had full scholarships and, can speak to that aspect, why it's important to, go out for those things, because I did actually have a full scholarship for undergrad. All of my debt comes from my master's and PhD program. Right. But all of those experiences people can learn from, because the average student complain about doing scholarships because, they take so long, you may never hear back, but it's worth it. That time, putting forth that effort is worth it, especially if it's cutting down on some of that debt. It's better to spend these few hours now to avoid taking out that debt versus spending years, decades trying to pay it off. So with the other people going out to speak, they're able to see how it works. And then, I make suggestions like, you really could do this yourself. Instead of me paying the $25 or $35 an hour that I pay, you could really create your own course and sell it. Each school has hundreds, if not over 1,000 students. So really one school could be enough to replace somebody's income if they're focused on this and then building those relationships. And then you already know, once one class graduates, a whole nother class comes in like clockwork. So it really is, especially for teachers who really enjoy teaching, know they have a passion for helping people, but are just frustrated with the administration or the lack of work-life balance or almost feeling exploited. This really has let me follow my passion without having all those extra issues. And then I don't even want to say luck. It's just been more of a blessing that I had the idea to, hey, could I pay you to go speak at this school? Or would somebody be interested in talking about their day in Atlanta? Would somebody be interested in talking about this in Florida? So it's really come together.
So you're sending people out now with your content, and they're delivering it in another state or another city. So that means obviously you don't need to travel. And so are you paying them a set fee? How does that work?
I pay an hourly fee, anywhere from $25 to $35 an hour. And then after somebody's been with me for 90 days, then they will get a percentage of whatever courses or memberships they sell. Like currently right now, I'm working on a planner, and it will really just walk, students through maybe this month or this week, find some scholarships that you're interested in applying to and make a list of them, get the links so you have them available. Maybe the next week, write out some standard essays about, your experiences or, the tell me about yourselves. So once you do apply to these scholarships, you kind of already have a template. Maybe add a few words, change a few words, but it's not like you're starting from scratch, but really just walking them through the process. and it'd be inexpensive, maybe less than $15. But with it being inexpensive and being available to all the schools that I'm sending people to, that's to me something that I feel would bring in a lot of income, but not really put too much pressure on people's pockets, because that's not something I definitely want, to create something I can pass on to my kids, but I also don't want it to be a burden to other people either. So that's pretty much how it works. And like I said, in the process, while they're speaking for me, I talk more about, how I create these things, how you can do the same thing. A lot of the people are teachers. So when you go talk to these students, it's no different than talking to students in your classroom. I try to offer things that don't require a lot of hands-on assistance, but no different than tutoring. That's coaching in the business industry. And people pay a lot of money for a one-on-one coaching, things that we do for free as teachers that also have to be tutors. So it's really no different, just a different topic. And you're finding your own students and getting the rewards that you're expecting versus feeling like you're being used, because being a teacher is great, but sometimes education doesn't make you feel as valued as you should be.
Yeah. So just let me get clear on this. Are you looking for more teachers now to sell or to teach your content in schools, or are you trying to train teachers on how to create their own content? Like, what's your kind of primary focus right now?
My primary focus now is still growing the option where people speak at schools. It's not just limited to teachers. It's just that's who's more in my network, because I've been teaching. But it really could be anybody. It could be other accounting majors that want to do it. There are sometimes I'll speak at a college, and students who already have their own debt will want to speak as a way to bring in income instead of working at McDonald's and things like that. But also what it's grown into is, like I mentioned, I was adjuncting at a college. And when coronavirus came, our school ended up laying off a lot of instructors, pretty much because enrollment dropped. So a few people reached out and, were saying, well, you said you did these digital courses, could you help me do the same thing? And like I said, my approach has been to focus on a problem. Everybody's going through different problems. So we sit down, talk about, what's a problem you feel like you could help somebody else overcome. And in that, I've helped people start programs where they help students with math or, cooking programs, or even just helping with potty training. So I would say my goal is to help more people who maybe felt like I did. I accomplished all these great things and I should be extremely proud and happy. But now I'd probably rather just be at home with my kids. So not just limited to education, but any career woman that's had these, big aspirations of going and getting their degree and doing that, and then getting a good job and doing that, and, excelling in their career, but still feeling like, I'm doing great over here, but I'm missing my kids. I'm missing that quality time with my family. So I would say now I'm just really looking to spread the message on, we're not stuck with these decisions. I know in the groups on Facebook, a lot of times teachers feel like, well, I have this degree and I can't do anything with it. Or even as an accountant, I have this degree, can't really do anything with it. You can, even if it's doing the exact same thing you're doing now, but just finding your own students. So a math teacher, instead of teaching for the school, you could create your own programs for homeschool parents, because that's something that they're looking for. I took my kids out of school because of coronavirus, and they attend a virtual school. But while I was making the decision, I was thinking maybe I should just homeschool them myself. So I joined a few groups, and they're always asking for certified teachers, lesson plans, curriculum, because they don't know what to do. But you do. So that is definitely something that somebody could pick up and start. Or like I said, no different with accounting, doing bookkeeping for small business owners, but more than just doing the bookkeeping, teaching a course on how they can do it themselves. You're already teaching it in the classroom at the college. Why not learn to market yourself find your own clients, and the same effort that you're putting in, you really get to create the life you want, because not only are you the teacher, but it's your own course. You set it when you're going to teach it. You determine how long it's going to take. You determine what people have to do. So it really puts your life back on you.
Do you use a hosting platform? Where do you teach it from? Like, do you just do a Zoom call? How do you run it?
Google Meets.
Okay.
When I first started, I was unsure. I was unsure if this was going to work. So I don't want to say I tried to be cheap, but I really tried to keep costs as low as possible. So I bought a $12 domain name from Google Domains, and that's $12 a year. I bought the Google Workspace. Well, back then I think it was called G Suite. But $12 a month, and you get access to Google Meet and Google Drive, all of that. So I use what I have available, and most people are either familiar with Zoom or Google Meet anyway. So that's what I use. My first courses were really created with Google Sites and connected to PayPal. So my website is a Google site, and if you click on it to buy a course, it sends you to PayPal, and I have a trigger that's set up to send the email to give you access to that. So like I said, starting out, I was kind of piecing stuff together to make sure it would work first. But once I started bringing in income, then I moved to a platform called MemberVault. And to be honest, that's still fairly inexpensive for people who are starting out. A teacher or anybody that wants to create their first course, that platform is free. Up to, I think, maybe 300 participants and three paid offers, I believe it is.
Right. Yeah. And it's called MemberVault. Is that right?
It is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is it similar to Patreon or one of those kind of platforms where
I've not used Patreon, but it is something that people can use for a website. They could use it to set up courses, or let's say somebody wants to create an ebook or their own planner. It's something that can, hold that, house it for them. So once somebody, wants access, it's an immediate download versus you having to get an email and then send it. And it also integrates with a lot of other platforms, like maybe an email platform like MailerLite, things like that, where you can start for low cost or free. So, you can get used to it, figure out what you want to offer, what people are interested in paying for, without feeling like, I've invested all this money and I'm stuck in the same situation I was stuck in once I got all this student loan debt. So it's really been a blessing, because like I said, I started out real inexpensive, kind of piecing things together. But I think ultimately it's the value of the information you provide. A lot of us being teachers, you may have worked in a school where you didn't have all the resources you needed, but you still had to make that information understandable to your students. So the same here. If people are in a problem and, really want to get out of it, they just want the help. They don't care if you paid $1,000 for the prettiest platform or if it's a download. If you're giving them the information that they need and it's going to help them overcome something, do what works for you. And then as you grow, improve it, make it better, make it nicer. I believe I saw a meme before. It was talking about Zoom and how before COVID hit, some people didn't notice, but a lot of their icons were really, basic. It didn't seem like they put a lot of effort into the different icons they had available. But as soon as, people were social distancing and had to go home, their platform took off. It didn't care that, maybe Vimeo or something else looked nicer. They provided a function, it was reliable, and people took off with it. So the same with anybody that's listening, with whatever you're offering. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it's helping people, put it out and then approve upon it. As you get feedback, or as you better understand what helps people, or as you better understand what works for you.
Yeah, great advice. I love it. Okay, so if someone wanted to work with you and maybe go to schools and talk about student loan debt, how would they get in touch with you? What's the best way to find you?
My website for that is called knowledge2income.org. The word knowledge, number 2, and the word income.org.
Right.
I can also be found on Facebook at Danyall, and then also on Instagram as the Income Reinventor.
The
But
income
all of
reinventor, is it?
it is.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, it was just a bit hard to hear you say that, so I wanted to make sure we get that right. So I'll put all these links on the show notes for this episode so people can
Okay.
come and find that on the hosting platform that I use for the podcast. And so as we wrap this up, I've got 2 more questions for you. What's the
Okay.
legacy that you want to leave in the world?
Oh, wow. The legacy that I want to leave is that our lived experiences could probably provide the life that we want better than our degrees.
Hmm.
And I think that's something that has kind of, I don't want to say been proven, but as I continue on this journey, the same thing that I would have done as a collegiate instructor, doing it for myself provides a bigger benefit for my family, not just financially, but being able to build that legacy. So I would definitely say our lived experiences or what our purpose for being here would create the life we're expecting better than our degrees.
I love it. Thank you. And finally, as we wrap it up, what's your favorite song?
My favorite song is What Can I Do by Ty Tribbett. It's a gospel song, and it's pretty much saying, without God, I wouldn't be able to do anything. And I feel like that's so true in my business. Like I shared, the way that I was brought up, I would have never quit a job. That's unheard of. You're going to quit to do what? To be a mom. There's plenty of moms out here working 2-3 jobs. That doesn't make any sense. But I was unhappy doing all of that. Even though that was normal, I didn't like it. I didn't like that I never had time for my kids. So outside of just crying and being frustrated about it, I prayed a lot about it. And now I happen to end up still doing what I love, but having the time that I need for my family. And that's definitely nothing that I did on my own.
Thank you for sharing that. Hey, Danyall, Pugh, thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Larksong Enterprises with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Do you know someone else who could benefit from hearing more stories of hope and transition from teachers all around the world? Please take a moment to share this and other episodes via your podcast app. Each share helps me reach listeners just like you who can benefit from this content. The Get Out of Teaching podcast is proud to be part of the Experts on Air podcast network. For show notes and other resources, please visit larksong.com.au/podcast.